Today we're going to be talking about whether you should plant seeds directly into the garden or whether you should put them in seed trays first. Video I'm going to share all of that. I'm going to share some of the guidelines that I follow for my garden and what ones I never buy as seedlings and you shouldn't either. And make sure you stick around to the end because I'm going to share a few tips and tricks on growing seeds at home. It's all happening in this video, so if you haven't already, hit subscribe and let's get started. With the change of season just around the corner, seeds and seedlings are a really hot topic. So these are some of the seeds that I direct sow in my garden. At all times, I never plant these in seed trays and therefore I never buy them as seedlings. And that is your root vegetables. These are things like carrots, beetroots, radishes, turnips, all those sort of root vegetables I only sow directly into the garden. Obviously the root part of the vegetable is really important and that is where a lot of the growth is happening. And they are also really sensitive, so they don't like being transplanted out. I plant them all directly into the garden and I leave them there for the entire time. I never pull them out. The only thing I do sometimes is I will thin them out. So if I want to grow a really big patch, I'll plant a whole lot of seeds, and then once they start to get a little bit bigger, like maybe the size of my little finger or even a little bit smaller, I'll thin them out and I'll use those baby carrots or those baby radishes in salads, and that will give more room for the rest of my seedlings to grow and have space to create those roots. But I also don't plant things in straight lines, so for me in my garden I like to plant my root vegetables all in between other plants to fill in the gaps. So once I have a lot of my larger plants planted into the garden, I'll use the root vegetables like the radish to fill in the gaps, and that also creates sort of a natural succession planting for me where some of them grow faster than others depending on the amount of light they're getting or the amount of shade they're getting from the other plants. And that way I don't have all my vegetables ready at the same time, and once I start harvesting the ones that are ready, then I'll just pop in a few extra seeds to refill those gaps again. Therefore, things like carrots, radishes and beetroots are things that I never buy at the shops. And there's three main reasons for that. Number one is it's not very economical. You only get, a few seeds or seedlings in those packages that you buy at the shops, and you get a whole lot more seeds when you buy a packet of seeds. The second thing is, like I said before, they don't like being transplanted. So often those seed trays of carrots and radishes that you've bought from the stores are going to get some transplant shock, or they're going to be stunted, or they're going to be really fiddly and hard and delicate to pull out of the seed trays and then plant out, so there may be a lot more damage done to the very sensitive roots. And the third reason is that root vegetables are one of the worst for absorbing toxins. So you really want to make sure that you're growing root vegetables in really healthy organic soil and you have sourced some good seeds, because they are obviously in contact with the soil at all times. They can absorb a lot more of those chemicals and toxins. So grab your root vegetable seeds and go and chuck some of those in the garden. Alright, so next up I'm going to share sort of like a guideline on how I decide whether I'm going to direct sow, plant in seed trays, or I'm going to purchase plants. And obviously these guidelines are just something that I do, but hopefully you'll be able to get some tips and tricks for your own garden. So first up we've got direct sow, and obviously we talked about root vegetables, so all my root vegetables always get planted directly into the garden. Next up I assess the ease and vigor of the growth of the plant and how badly I want them to grow. So this is something that's obviously going to come with experience, or like you doing research and watching videos to find out what plants are easy to grow and what ones are going to take a little bit more care and love. Edible plants that are hardy and sort of have a weed-like growth are often ones that I will plant direct in the garden. To be honest, I direct sow the majority of my garden. I like the survival of the fittest approach, and I just plant a few extra seeds if I am worried about them not popping up. But things like parsley, rocket, fennel, spinach, nasturtiums, all those sort of things have a sort of weed-like growth, and they are really hardy and vigorous growing plants, so I will direct sow those straight into my garden. Direct sowing can be a bit hit and miss, but it's also a really low maintenance way to garden, so if you do go away often, or you just want to throw things in the garden and see what happens, then direct sowing can be the best way to go for that. Growing in seed trays does take care and maintenance. You have to make sure that they are watered regularly, and if you're going away a lot, then sometimes they can get forgotten about. If you are unsure, or if you want to sort of make sure that you are going to get those things, then either plant a few seeds in different places, or you can do both by planting them directly into the garden and planting a few in seed trays to sort of have insurance. Alright, so next up we have seed trays. And why do I plant in seed trays, and what seeds do I sow in seed trays? Some of the vegetables that I grow in seed trays are things like your brassicas, your broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower. Those sort of things are a little bit harder to grow, and they also are really vulnerable and susceptible to pests. So it can be a good idea to plant those things into seed trays first and wait till they are a little bit bigger and the stems are a little bit stronger and hardier to then plant them out into the garden, and you'll have hopefully a little bit more resilience to having them being eaten by pests. Whereas if you were to plant your broccoli seeds directly into the garden, as they pop up and they're really tiny, they can get completely eaten and they'll be gone in a night. And again, that's also if it's something that you really want. If you really want to grow broccoli, then maybe it is a good idea for you to have those in seed trays so that you know that you can see them coming up, that you know that they're growing, and then once they're big and strong, you can plant them out into the garden. The other reason that I grow in seed trays is if I'm trying to be really organized and ahead of the game. If it is really early in the season, like at the moment it is still quite cold outside and we're coming up to spring, that can be a really good time to get your seeds growing in seed trays, because seeds do take quite a long time to grow. Things like your spring and summer crops like your tomatoes and your capsicums, they take quite a long time to grow from seed. So by the time you have planted your seeds and they have grown into a really strong healthy plant, the weather by that stage will have warmed up and it'll be springtime, and you'll be able to plant those out into the garden and you'll be completely ahead of the game, and you'll have a really good crop of tomatoes that are already well established, so they'll be able to get straight into growing. And next up we have buying seedlings. And on the flip side of being early in the season or ahead of the game, we have if we are late in the season or behind the game, that is when I will purchase seedlings. So if you're already well into the season and you want to get some things growing in the garden, then you can purchase seedlings. That means that they're already, quite established and will start growing really quickly, because you are going to run out of time if it gets too cold or too hot, depending on what season you're in. That is one of the main reasons I may purchase seedlings, and that is if I'm been away or I haven't been able to get my seeds established, or I've just got a big gap in the garden and I want to plant something and it's late in the season, then I may purchase some seedlings to plant then. So the other reason that I might buy seedlings is because it is something that's really hard to grow, or that it's going to take a really long time to grow. So there are two things that I often will purchase and I won't plant from seed, and one of those is strawberries. So if you've ever grown strawberries from seed, you'll know how slow and long that process is, which is always fun to do. I love trying to grow new things, and I still every now and then will pop some strawberry seeds in, but if I want to grow strawberries, then I'll probably more likely to buy some strawberry plants, and that way I can get a strawberry patch established without it taking 10 years. The other thing that I may purchase is a chili plant. So chilies can be notoriously hard to grow from seed. They like specifically like warm temperatures, and I just find them painful. And I only usually like to have 1 or 2 chili plants at a time, and I will overwinter mine, so my plants will last me a few years. So I'm not buying them every year. I do keep my chili plants for up to 3 years. So that's another thing that I will often buy, and I won't plant as a seed. So some of the tips I have for sowing seeds directly into the garden is don't plant them too deep. So you want to be planting seeds as deep as they are in size. So most root vegetable seeds are pretty small, so you only want to be putting a light dusting of soil on top of them. Another tip is that you want to keep them nice and moist while they are germinating, so don't let them dry out. And just remember, you get to create your own garden. It is your canvas to design, so do what works for you, and usually the best way to find that out is by trial and error. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, leave me a comment below and let me know whether you like to direct sow or plant in seed trays.